What if I told you that you could spell resilience with 3 letters and an umlaut? Meet Zoe. Zoe Dalton is this week's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast, and her story will impress, inspire, and invite you to look within and see what you're really made of. With $30.28 to her name, newly unemployed, coming off an abusive marriage, and with 2 young kids in tow, Zoe was literally starting over. She didn't just build a new life. As she describes it, she built a queendom, embracing a mindset shift that gave her the power to see possibility despite so much pain. And she has spent nearly every day since stepping into action, bringing those possibilities to life for her and her 2 boys. She discovered the healing power of exploring nature alone, finding joy in the rebuilding of herself and the creation of new experiences. She practiced gratitude daily, giving thanks for every moment in her life, even the most painful. And she found strength in vulnerability at home, at work, with her kids, everywhere, showing up fully so that each connection in her life is grounded in truth, love, and understanding. Today, Zoe has a job she loves, a family she adores and fights for, and is seeing even greater possibilities for herself. She plans to pursue motivational speaking, something she will be amazing at, with a focus on high school students and survivor groups. We will all be blessed when she steps into that ever-evolving version of herself. Okay, Zoe Dalton, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
I am excited to have you here. It's an interesting and fun connection for you to the show. I believe you were initially connected to me by Alan Goodrich, who was a guest. God, now it's probably 8 months ago now that he was a guest, and an awesome guy. I mean, you know his story, but for those who don't, he's a SWAT officer and an author. Second book actually coming, I believe. But his first book was amazing. So yeah, I'm glad that he connected us. And I know you've got your own interesting story as well to share. So why don't we start there and just give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about kind of who you are, what you do, and how you came to be doing it.
So I am, let's see, I have a couple of hats that I wear. My primary job is I'm a recruiter in a large healthcare system here in New Jersey. I am a single mom. I have been a single mom since I was married, and which led me to here. So needless to say, I have been able to reinvent myself several times over the last 16 or so years. I'm very proud to say that. And that all started when I kicked off my divorce, and the joint bank account was cleaned out, and I was given a bank check for $30.28, and I had been downsized from my job, and that was the cornerstone of where I started to rebuild me and my life, myself and my kids, and will continue to build throughout the rest of my life. But it was a way of it was the catalyst that made me see the fabric of who I am. And why I am the way I am, and what I can give to others as a result of all of it.
So $30 in your bank account, newly divorced, newly out of a job, and I believe at the time you already had your 2 sons.
I did. My sons were very small. They were 5 and 3 at the time. So during the divorce, it was a brutal divorce. But after that, you know, I just started working my way up in terms of my career. Started from scratch all over again. I took jobs that were horrible, but it was a paycheck because I had to feed and clothe my kids and put a roof over their head, and I had to start somewhere. And you know, it was been a labor of love on myself, not just in terms of my career, but in my own healing process as a survivor of domestic violence.
Wow. I mean, you know, one of the words that's popping into my head here is the word resilience. It seems like you've demonstrated a lot of that over the years, certainly coming out of an abusive situation, coming out with essentially zero money, and finding your way to a place where, certainly as I hear it, like you seem like you're pretty good right now,
I
keeping
am.
going, but like you're doing
Yeah,
pretty
this is,
well.
yeah, I'm in the best place that I've ever been. I'm very grateful. I am able to look back and say that I am grateful for everything life has thrown at me because they have been the rocks upon which I build what we call my queendom. Um,
Yeah,
and
like,
that was something that I had to learn as I healed to value, love myself more and respect myself more. And I learned to put on this invisible queen crown so that
mm,
I could step into that, and anything that didn't serve me or was good for me, it was like, oh, that crown is on and I need to step into that and own it, because if you perceive yourself as that, you walk into it and then life changes, it manifests around you, and
mm,
it's in here and it extends outward from you, and life
mm.
changes.
How did you find that source of sort of strength and grounding in the crown? Like, where did that come from for you?
So it was in it was in my second court case. I was taken to court 3 times in 2 years after I divorced for full custody. They were frivolous cases.
Mm-hmm,
But it was in the second one, which was only like a few months after the initial case.
mm-hmm,
And there was a best interest valuation going on, which is done by a forensic psychologist. And I had gotten to the point where, there was so much animosity between my ex-husband and I just couldn't take it anymore. I remember sending him an email, and it was I was always in defensive mode.
mm,
And in my defense, I sent something, and it was just in exchange for some of our kids' belongings. It was
mm-hmm.
just, unfortunately, the way that I had to find a way to cooperate with him. It was always like trading something for another. And I
Ah,
sent this email, and I physically felt sick, and I ran to the bathroom and I got sick. And that's when I realized that I was putting poison in my own veins.
mm,
I just couldn't carry it anymore. And that was the pivot point. And then I went on to this extremely spiritual journey of self-discovery and healing and looking within myself. I read as much as I could so that I could
mm-hmm,
understand myself. And then also in court they say adversary.
mm-hmm.
But my ex, because we had kids together, I needed to heal in order to understand and to some point have a better cooperation level between us for the sake of our
Yeah.
kids. And I
Mm,
was able to do that after quite some time. We actually had 3 years of being amicable, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for everything, and I even thanked him for that as well.
mm,
When we were amicable, I sat him down and I was like, thank you for everything that you did, because it helped me look at myself and be a better woman, a better mother, a better employee, a better daughter, a better friend. And he sat there dumbfounded. Um, but when you are able to look at someone who has really brought you to the depths of hell, I mean, there was a point where I didn't want to continue life,
mm,
and I had to pick myself up by myself and
mm-hmm.
move forward. And I don't even regret that. It brings me emotion, but I'm so grateful because I have so much more resiliency. It's the adversity that and how you face that adversity is
Mm-hmm.
what can bring you the resiliency.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's such an amazing statement to me to be able to thank him in that situation. I mean, it's interesting because it's, certain practices sort of will tell you to be grateful for, whether it's spiritual or psychological practices. They'll tell you that there's a place to get to, but that's like, those are words on a page versus actually getting to a place where you feel it enough to be able to say it to the person who put you through so much. I mean, how did you get there? How did you get to that space?
I the first thing that I did was look for the gratitude every day. So every morning when I woke up, and I still do this, is I choose one gratitude, something to be grateful for. And it can be the same thing every day. I choose something different every day. And when the day goes awry or you have negative thoughts, I go back to that gratitude. So for example, one of the things that I've always been grateful for is I was able to hear my son's laughter, and I still can. And even though they're older, but when they were little, the laughter is what kept me going. And that is the good stuff. That's the golden nuggets that keep you going. And so when something negative happens, you think back, you have to pause yourself, be aware of that negative pattern or negative thought, and you go back to that gratitude. And that's when you go, this is just noise. And you're just like, what's this for? Yeah. So then the other thing that I did was I did a lot of reading. And I wasn't on social media for quite some time. I filtered all that out because I really wanted to work on myself. And I needed to heal the wounds. So I went back into my timelines, and I went to my childhood, and I started uncovering things and unpacking things and reading more. And I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of kayaking. I went hiking. I spent a lot of time alone. And those are the things that brought me joy. So it's important to find joy, and those things, the kayaking and the walk in the wilderness and those things, that connection with the self allows you to see that only you can create happiness. We are creators by design, and nothing is going to bring, and nobody is going to bring you happiness. We've got to create it. So we've got to find that within ourselves, and you have to really connect with yourself to start to create that. So those were my starting points, was the understanding of myself and touching my wounds, some of the deepest wounds, turning and healing them and getting intimate with them so that I can create love from them. So.
Wow. It's interesting as you say this, because, in some ways it can almost sound like you're speaking a foreign language, especially in the world of today, where, I feel like the world is designed to protect ourselves from actually going within, experiencing ourselves, looking at ourselves, and being alone with our thoughts and our feelings for even a minute. We have all these distractions, right? And so to deliberately go out and seek that, and then to not only seek it, but to really do it. I mean, to sit with feelings, which, any feeling is tough. I mean, I've been trying to practice this a little more recently because I've been reading about it, and I'm like, ooh, did that for a minute and that's enough, but, to do it for a long enough time that it really heals, and not only heals, but strengthens who you are, so that you can get to a place where you feel grateful for the wounds. And like, as you said, it brings out love. I mean, it's sort of remarkable to me on some level. And I'm really intrigued by that you kind of got there. It sounds like mostly just through your own self-reflection. Was there anybody in your life who was helping you at that time, or was this purely a self-reflective exercise?
I had a friend who had gone through worse trauma than I did. Wow. Hers started in childhood. She was abused in many ways, and she was kind of my guide for a while. And then when I really dove into my spiritual work, and when you do that kind of healing, it's called dark work, and it's not like dark magic or anything like that. It's just the process of uncovering the wounds and the things that you are not aware of. And it's not fun work. It's brutal, grueling, ugly work, because you have to look at yourself. And you are 100% correct that we are in a society where we have all these distractions and medications, and that's why addicts become addicts, is they aren't willing to look at their wounds, and they self-medicate, and it's an easy trap to fall into. And so it's the willingness to go, I need to, as you say, desuckify. I have to desuckify myself, know, and you have to want to. And she was a guide for quite some time, and then she and I separated for a bit because I knew I needed to do do the work on my own.
Yeah.
And so I did my own reading, I did my own meditations, and then I went into martial arts. And my sons were martial artists before I was. I started a year after them in the same dojang. And the one of the biggest reasons why I joined was because it was something that I had never done before. I mean, I'm an 8-time All-American swimmer, NCAA All-American swimmer.
Wow.
I have done triathlons. I've done races of 5Ks and 10Ks. This was something that I knew was going to help me in many ways to grow and mature and evolve. And that's what I was seeking. And martial arts, I trained specifically in Hapkido, and Hapkido means the way of coordinated inner power. So that to me alone was a sign that I needed to do this. And the martial arts really teaches you the art of self-control and mastering oneself so that you can master what's around you, because we really don't have control of anything except for ourselves and how we respond to things. Yeah. So a lot of the techniques and maneuvers and situations that I had to encounter in my training triggered my PTSD or my CPTSD from the years that I was married. And that was, I learned to move through my triggers that way. I learned how to handle those situations in the dojang so that I could handle them outside of the dojang. That was really important for me. Because I didn't want to be a victim anymore. And I wanted to say, I'm not a DV survivor, I'm a thriver. And there's a huge difference when you go from that victim mentality to an empowered mentality. Yeah. It's a complete game changer, and it's not an overnight process. And there were many times, even, in the last couple of years, where I thought I was through certain triggers and I wasn't, and you just uncover more. It's a constant process, and you go up that spiral, something knocks you back down a couple steps, and then you learn more, and then you go back up the spiral higher than you were before. It's just this constant process of going up and down, and it's whichever direction you're going in, it's a positive process that you experience.
As you described it, and I think maybe you mentioned this in your LinkedIn bio, actually, this idea that that process, there's no finish. Sometimes we like to think about okay, I'm going to get through this process and then I'm going to be just good for the remainder of my life. But it's not like that, right?
Oh, no, how I wish. Because I'd be like, are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Yeah.
It's more the way life works. And not everybody agrees. And that's the beauty of having conversations like this. Yeah. Is I've learned that as we grow up, we sit in school. It's a classroom, right? We go to elementary school, middle school, and high school. We get all the lessons and we take the test. But life, when we graduate, then we go into the school of life. And we have school of life, but at a more controlled level when we're in school. Yeah. But when we hit the school of life, that's when we get the test. And then after the test, we get the lessons. And then we get another test and we apply, and we're supposed to apply what we learn. And things get easier every time we get thrown a test. And after a while, once we master what we're supposed to learn, it stops. We move on to another thing we have to learn. So we may close a chapter, but as we close a chapter, there's another one open and going, oh, look what I'm going to learn. All right.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah. And parenting has a way of doing that too, because our parenting is in constant change as our kids get older. And if we understand that concept, and even as our parents get older, our relationship with our parents constantly changes. And I'm now parenting my parents, so I'm parenting teenagers. So, and now I'm parenting elderly. So they're like the same thing. I've got overgrown toddlers everywhere.
Nobody wants to listen.
So exactly, but I'm learning too, and I'm learning as I go. And so the tests are always coming to see if I'm applying what I'm learning. And so it's this never ending process. And if you recognize that you are ever evolving and ever developing and ever learning, you understand that it is a spiral and it's a beautiful process. And especially when you hit your 40s and your midlife, it's the unraveling. Brené Brown says it's the unraveling. And it's so true. You just unravel who you are and you're like, hold on a second. It's quite interesting.
It is, yeah. I would say the midlife process is one of the more, it's hard, but it's also rich, and eye-opening, and you see the world very differently. But I love the sort of movement from that school mindset, which I think in school, maybe that's where we get this idea that we sort of graduate and then we're good. It's like, I just got to get through school, right? And then by the time I'm done, then I'm good. And then like life just keeps showing up, as you said, and just keeps giving you these new chapters and these new lessons, and they show up in different ways. And yeah, it's interesting. And then, yeah, you hit midlife, and I don't know what it is about that, whether it's just an awareness of the finiteness of life that really starts to hit you, that it starts to break down so many of the illusions that we hold.
Oh, exactly. It's you, and especially in this day and age when there's social media and there's seeking of acceptance outside of oneself, when what really matters is the acceptance of oneself. And it is an unraveling. It's a self-discovery, and you really get perspective and the importance of what really is important. And that goes back to the gratitude. You get to a point where you're like, I'm just not here to pay bills and die. I need to live and experience, because that's what life is. We're here to live and experience and evolve and love. Everything beyond that is just an avenue for us to live life. And I think so many are missing the point. Like, I used to view success as, a job title or a certain income. And now it's the quality of the sleep that I get, the quality of relationships that I have, quality of relationship I have with myself. Am I going out and truly living and absorbing the beauty of nature and people? And that is success, instead of being bogged down, tied to a desk or whatever. That's not supposed to define us at all.
It's a great segue into the construct of work and desuckifying work. And one of the things I always like to ask people is, what role does work play in your life, in this sort of life that you've created here and are still creating? Where does it fit for you?
So I have a couple of careers going on. And in this day and age, you have more than one income stream. Yeah. Especially as a single parent, it's important. So as a recruiter, I know I sit at a desk for 7.5 hours a day. And I'm not chained to it. I have a lot of autonomy in what I do and creativity. My manager knows me very well. He leaves me alone. I do my thing. I connect with him frequently. And I love my job. But I find that I am a very social person. I have a balance of being social, an extrovert and introvert. But I'm always connecting people. I love to connect people. I love to introduce people. I love to try and make things happen between people, help people, and, just help them along their way. It makes me feel good. And so I do that at work, and I do that in my personal life because it just brings me a level of fulfillment, and that I can't find anywhere else. And so, like, even I started writing horses, which was a whole new experience, and something that is very, very eye-opening and enriching. But the owner of the farm that I ride horses at, I didn't even know he was a pilot until I was mentioning my younger son, who's 16. He's in aviation school, along with high school. And he's like, oh, I fly too. And we started talking, and I connected him to my son's flight instructor, and now they're going to fly. So it's those simple little things I find that's just what I do without having my recruiting hat on. And it's so nice. And then I'm also I'm a licensed life insurance agent. So I'm always talking to people, and I'm always helping people, and so that they can help their families. And that's extremely important to me, because to me, family is everything. Yeah. So it's always showing up, whether you're sitting at a desk or have a certain hat on. That hat can always change, whether you're a mom, whether you're an employee, we're called team members, whether you're a friend, or whether you're, in a social aspect, or, doing something, a hobby or something that you enjoy. You can always have that overflow and get fulfillment, even if you aren't sitting at your desk, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think it's something we all struggle with a little bit. It's finding the ways to one, what I hear in some of that is that you are you. And sometimes you're you in a setting that's at a desk and you're connecting people through recruiting. Sometimes that's helping them with life insurance. A lot of times that's being a mom. And a lot of times that's showing up just around your life with helping people find each other, that kind of connector personality. And so it's just finding ways to be you wherever you show up.
Yes, I am not defined by my job title. I define me. And at the end of the day, even the definition of ourselves really should always be evolving. You know, you shed parts of you that no longer serve you. Like, I feel like I've reinvented myself and shed so many parts of me that I'm not who I was 10 years ago. I'm not who I was 20 years ago. And that's how it should be. But you should, at the core of who you are, what you value, who you value, and most of all, value and love yourself above all, because you can't have connections with anybody and have healthy connections until that starts from here. So that is the core of everything that you do. Everything.
Yeah. It's interesting. As you said that, I thought that, like, I think there's almost something where we can think it's a little bit selfish to spend time on ourselves. And yet it's sort of the opposite, right? I mean, and I think one of my previous guests kind of works as a self-care coach. Her name's Katie McDonald. And she brought this up a little bit, that self-care is actually the least selfish thing you can do, because you end up showing up better for the people in your life, whether it's at work, which, you know, I think everybody's probably experienced work situations where you're butting heads with people and you're not showing up as your best self, and others are probably not either. And then obviously in life, we have all the various relationships where those can be challenging in their own way. And we're always sort of seeking outside of ourselves for those answers. You know, how do I fix them? How could they be better? How could this be better? Why isn't it this way? And yet we don't think we have permission to go inside and really deal with ourselves. Was that there for you at any point, or have you always had that ability to be like, you know what, I'm going in?
So my parents are deaf. So I have always been a caregiver to them, because I have always served as an interpreter at some point for whatever reason. Growing up, we didn't have the technology that we do now, but I've always, you know, I was always a giver by nature, because I had to always show up for my parents, which I am very grateful for, because now, as they're elderly and my dad has cancer, like, I'm able to be there and show up for him and interpret and be involved in their care and so on. So I was always putting everybody else first. And then when my ex-husband became ill and I was 40 weeks pregnant with my younger son, and he actually recovered. He wasn't supposed to recover, but he did. I had an infant, a newborn, a toddler, and a 42-year-old who could barely walk, talk, or eat on his own. So it was then when I said, I got to take care of me too, because if I don't take care, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I know everybody says that, but how do you pour from an empty cup? Have you ever actually taken a cup and when there's nothing in it, what are you going to give, you know? So and then after my divorce, I am sole provider to my kids in every way through the years. So again, I can't give to my kids unless I give to me first, because you can't give away what you don't have. So I've learned to do that. And now I'm learning the difference between self-care and aftercare. And what I had been doing is called aftercare, where I give without giving to myself and deplete. And then I do the aftercare, like I catch up, recharge my batteries. You got to do that a little bit every day. And that's what I'm learning to do. And it's called hedonistic self-care. And there's a big difference. And my younger son, he's one of my greatest teachers, where, you know, when it's the school year, as he walks out the door, he's like, take breaks, Mom. And some days I'm better at it and some days I'm not. But he puts that, he's like my little Jiminy Cricket, but I have
Love
made
that.
more of a conscious effort to do that daily, whether it's, as I'm in the shower first thing in the morning. It's not just the task I got to get done so I can start my day. I talk to myself. There's the self-efficacy statement where it's like I'm cleansing my body. I'm washing away everything from, all my dreams that I had from the night before, and I'm getting ready for today, and it's going to be a good day. I'm cleansing my hair. And like when you put moisturizer on, I'm nourishing my body. When you sit down and eat, I make a point not to eat while I work, even if it's for 10 minutes, because that's me taking time out to nourish my body, not just by food, but by connecting with myself. I don't look at my phone. It's just me. So even that is the hedonistic self-care. And that's so important. No matter if you're a mom, you're not, you're a caregiver, you're not, it's just so important to do that. And I wish I had done that way earlier. But again, it was my timeline. It takes a while, especially our generation, the Gen Xers. We're just taught to go and go and go and go. And to do and do and do and do and just don't stop. And it's really an unhealthy cycle, and we can break it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always like to think of Gen Xers as like the best generation, and I still do. But we never had that thing of like taking care of yourself and paying attention to yourself and listening to what your body's telling you, listening to what your spirit's telling you. It's just like, no, it was like go, 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 and then go party and blow off steam. Like that work hard, play hard kind of generation, which believe me, did that for a while. It was fun. But it is not a sort of sustainable way to keep yourself, with the energy you need and with the ability to grow like you want to. So I think there's so much value in this idea of self-care. I've never heard the term hedonistic self-care, which is interesting because you think of hedonism and this kind of like going wild and going crazy and partying. Obviously, it has a different meaning here. It seems like it's just being very sort of laser focused on yourself. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah. And it's a lot of, like you said, a lot of people think that self-care is selfish. It's not. It is selfish, but in a very positive way. And once you flip that mindset that it is a necessity in order to sustain yourself so that you can show up for others. And my dad taught me one of the most important things as a human being is to show up, whether it's for yourself, and self-care is showing up for yourself. And having those healthy boundaries going, no, this is mine. But showing up for other people, but you can't show up for other people until you show up for yourself. So it's all connected. And once we flip that mindset from negative to a positive, it's a game changer. It always starts in here, and you have to connect here to here.
Yeah. God, so it's when you sort of lay it out, it's almost like, well, of course that's the way, but yet we learn it when we're, significantly older than we probably think we should. It's funny. You were talking about social media earlier, and I don't know if this is really an idea, but this thought came to me of like, we're so content to spend time scrolling and doing stuff. And like the way it's designed, it sort of feeds our mental needs and we stay on there. And I thought like, wouldn't it be interesting? Like I think about the process of like journaling and things like that, where you're being reflective about yourself. If there was a way that used some of that same technology, but you're just having conversations with yourself, and you're sitting there scrolling and figuring out like, there might be something already like this out there, but just the idea of like, if we were spending at least some percentage of our time doing that rather than just kind of fogging our brain with the even if it seems important, it's really not. It's just us like throwing stuff in our brain to like fill the space so that we can't think about anything else, what do you do? Do you do anything like journaling, reflecting, anything like that to help kind of ground any of this stuff?
I have been terrible about journaling. But I touch it and I don't touch it. It depends on my mood. I like to write philosophically. And if you go through my LinkedIn pages or my social media pages, I wasn't on social media for years because I needed to desuckify myself. I use a different word and I won't profanity. But when I took back my life because I realized that my life was being controlled by somebody who couldn't allow to control me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took back my life and I went on social media because I needed to start a support system for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that I used it for, it was a tool. It was a tool for me to learn and discover and seek answers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between using it as a tool and learning it and using it as just thing to just do to occupy your mind or an avoidance tool. There's tools that are positive and negative. So it's a matter of intent on what you really want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are times that, I journal because I just need to jot something down because it's in my head, like an aha moment, and I need to go back and ponder it.
Yeah.
But I really get my thoughts when I'm not thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No.
So things like when I'm driving and I don't listen to music sometimes, and I drive, times when I'm in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
And I purposely listen to my thoughts and the point is to not think. And that's when the downloads come. And that's when the clear philosophical thoughts come in.
Yeah.
And there's actually a post I'm going to be putting up. There's an ugly picture that goes with it. It's a bin full of horse manure. And it's one of the things that I have been pondering for quite some time because it's going to run deep, but it's going to have many touch points. And that's something that, I write down and then I let go of, and then I come back to it because it's like going up and down the spiral. Like you have a thought, you write it down, then you're like, and then you get something else from life, the universe. And then you're like, oh, I got to revisit that. I see more, or it goes deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, it's just this endless process. So that's what I use social media for. And it's a tool. And I really think it's a very powerful tool, especially for those who are looking for a better quality of life, to heal wounds and to move their life forward. We are our own filters. We have the algorithms set forth by that platform, but really we are.
Yeah.
We are the gatekeepers, whether it's social media or talk to or what food we take. We're the ultimate gatekeepers of that.
Yeah, I like that perspective on social media. And I think it's hard to get there. I think for me, it definitely helps by being a fairly regular contributor to it, writing and sharing, as well as commenting on those folks that I'm inspired by. So it's less of a passive, just like let it all fall on you, but more of an active. And I don't think you have to post to get that value, but I think you do have to comment. I think you do have to engage. At least.
You have to engage and have those interactions so that you what somebody contributes can only add to your thoughts. And then that's a springboard for something else, for something you need to learn, or you need to discover within yourself. So it is extremely, extremely important to have those interactions because, Brené Brown says it, when you put something out there, when you create something, you put out a level of vulnerability. And that's where connection begins. And that's where all the involvement comes, is those healthy interactions. And it has to start somewhere. And without that, you don't go anywhere. You really don't.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned earlier this idea of us as creators. And that's, I think, a good mindset shift to think of us as creators rather than simply sort of passive consumers of life or passive reactors to everything that comes at us. But the idea that we are the ones creating and bringing something into the world, and then that changes the way you experience all of it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, quick question for you. Who inspires you?
Oh, God. Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Does it have to be just one?
No, it can be as many as that show up.
I have to say, the people who inspire me the most are my parents. And the biggest reason is because they are deaf and they went to public schools and they didn't even know there was a language for the deaf community. It wasn't anybody else who was deaf. They weren't isolated, but they just didn't know there were others around them like that. So
Yeah.
Growing up, they had to do a lot of self-instruction in the classroom and a lot of adaptation. So I look at them, and they went all the way through their education up to college in public schools without interpreters, without note takers. That what didn't exist back then.
Wow.
So the phrase "I can't" has never existed in my realm of existence. Simply because I look at them and I'm like, if they can do it, there's no way I am allowed to say I can't. So I can, and even I struggle with, I do. And if I fail, it's not a failure because I learned something. I learned, it's never a fail unless you don't do it at all. So that's something that I've learned from them, and showing up for yourself. So the other thing that I look up to my kids. Yeah. They are my greatest teachers. My older son taught me how to say no. I struggled with being able to say no. Full stop, full sentence. Yeah. I struggled with that because I'm a pleaser and I'm a giver. He taught me how to do that. And I sat there like, well, damn. I got it. I'm in my 40s and I'm finally getting it. And then my younger son has taught me to be fully present and be in the moment, and to live joyfully. And I've learned so much more, but those are like the biggest nuggets. Yeah. And parenting in itself, just it's a 5 out of 5 stars. There's a lot of days it's a 1 out of 5 stars, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I really wouldn't. And I love my kids immensely, and I don't know what I would do without them. And it's the art of letting them go too. So that's the phase I'm in now. So I have to suckify that.
Well, it's interesting, as you said, that the idea that sometimes it's a 1 star, but overall it's this 5-star wouldn't trade it experience. And I think that's a good analogy, if that's the right word, for just living in general. I mean, one of the things another previous guest had mentioned, this woman, Lisa Eichberger, she was just on this week. And I was talking about desuckifying work. She's like, but I don't want to take all the suck out of work. The suck is where a lot of the learning has. So it's like, and I've heard somebody else say the idea of like, you want to find the right pain in your life, meaning the pain that you learn from, the pain where love gets to show up. And, I can imagine, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine there are times where it's very painful in lots of different ways, whether you're struggling with something or where you're in the phase now where you're getting to that let go phase. There's pain with that, but there's growth and there's learning and there's love showing up underneath all of that. Do you kind of abide by that, kind of like it's okay to have 1-star days because those are where the things come out?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in the one thing that I learned, one of the biggest things that I learned in my competitive swimming, and then also in the years that I did have keto, was on the days they don't want to go, those are exactly the days you need to go. And those crappy things at work, you have to go into them because you're going to learn something new. Like, they're unavoidable and they're really good for you. Those hard conversations, like I had to have conversations with my parents about, okay, this is in your living trust, but what am I going to do with you when you're not here? Like, what do you, and we had to have those hard conversations. Yeah. What's going to happen with the house? Like, and those are really sucky conversations, but those are where I learned about them and where the connection came. And those are, you can't have the peaks without the valleys. There's so many things that you can say to assimilate, but there is beauty in those crappy, sucky moments. Yeah. And some of your greatest moments lie within that. Like, I was penniless pretty much, and I had to figure out a way to feed my kids and, create a fun life for them while I was scraping by. And, we went to one summer where all we did was go to the parks in the county, and we played all afternoon, and I had no money that we created from that. So it's choosing your hard. You choose your hard. And if you choose your hard every time, you're gonna end up looking back going, wow, I'm glad I did that. I'm really glad that happened. I'm really glad I went through that.
Yeah. Again, it's like, I think there's so many forces that seem to want us to not dive into the hard, and make life cozy. And there's nothing wrong with being cozy at times. That's a wonderful experience. But if you don't get those opportunities, as you said, to kind of choose your heart and go through those things, it's hard to grow in that moment. It's hard to learn. And then it's hard for you to show up the way you really should be showing up for, whether it's your kids, people at work, your parents, all of those things. I want to shift gears a little bit because there's something you mentioned. You kind of mentioned it a little bit about like, you don't want to just try, you want to do. And then I think this might have been in your bio as well, this idea of like going from
I lost you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I lost you somewhere.
Can you hear me now?
I just can't hear you.
No.
Are you there? Oh, now I can hear you. That was weird.
That's weird. Well, we'll cut that out. So I'll go back. So he talked about this idea of trying isn't enough, right? You got to do, right? And I think you mentioned this notion of kind of wanting to go from dream to action. You know, it's like we all have dreams. And I think dreams are good. I'm a natural dreamer and I can get stuck in that state. You know, it's like, I just really love sitting in the dream. And so how do you find ways to go from the dream, whatever's really exciting you about the future, into action? What gets you to take those first steps?
So I'm a big believer in manifestation. And it all starts with a concept and just a thought, a simple thought. And then and some people believe it's different, and either way is fine, but dreaming to a thought, and the difference between a thought and manifesting it into your reality is action. It's the action. And just like I tell candidates whom I can't hire into a position because they're not qualified enough or whatever, especially like new grads, I always tell them, persevere. I applied for my job for 4 years before I even got a phone call about it. But I knew I wanted it 13 years beforehand. I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I kept building myself, reinventing myself, getting jobs that was going to get me closer and closer to where I wanted to be. So I wouldn't be where I am had I not had that, oh my God, I want to do that. That's where I want to be. I want to be working for that company. I want to be doing that. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I never lost sight of that goal. So your dream becomes a goal. Your goal happens in your reality the minute you start taking action. And just because you get a rejection, which is what I'm going back to what I tell my candidates, a rejection is not a no, never. And it's not this, not now. It's a detour. It's a simple detour. It's never a failure. It's never a true rejection. It just means you got to go this way. It just means you're taking a different route than what you thought was the path. What you think is the path doesn't mean that the universe is going, this is your path. It's going, you got to go that way. If you want to go to there, you got to go that way first or that way first. And you just have to embrace it, because that's where the learning comes. And you might discover that is not what you want to do. Going that way may bring you to, oh my gosh, I want to go that way. You know, like you just never know, but you will never get there until you step into action. You have to take the action.
Yeah. And I love the notion of, you know, it's not a no forever. And also this idea that as you start to take that detour, if you do end up back there, like you did, right? So you've been thinking about this job for a long time. It very well may be that for you to be able to show up in that job the way you need to and to be as helpful as you need to, you had to take that path. If you had just kind of jumped into that role, you wouldn't have been the recruiter you are now. You would not have had the tools, the experience, the wisdom, all of the things that now like flow out of you. And I think that's true in any job. I mean, I know for me, you know, I worked in advertising for years, and it's pretty competitive trying to get in as a creative person in advertising. And I just wanted to I was like, I know I could do it, so let me do it. And it's like, yeah, but I hadn't learned the things yet. And I had to kind of take jobs that, it's okay, and I kind of poked around. And then 5 years later, I'm in one of the ad agencies that I probably never thought I would ever get into. And it was but you had to do that. And if you had just thrust me into that place day one, I probably would have walked out a week later being like, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. So the learning, like you said, however you view it, the universe helping you or whatever force is guiding you there, there's a reason behind it. It's going to serve you in the end to take whatever detours you need to take. So I love that mindset. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. And that even goes back to, the $30.28. And, that was, I said it was the cornerstone in which I built my queendom on. And I now have an LLC called 30.28. And back then I didn't even think about that. It wasn't even in my realm of existence. Yeah. But I knew at some point I wanted to look back and go, look at where I started. And I just was like, I'm going to open an LLC and I'm going to do motivational speaking. I'm going to help people with resumes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that with it. And so looking that wasn't even a concept in my mind. Yeah. Is 14 years ago. It was what I finally, it was an idea that I just wanted to go, I want to be able to go look back and go, this is what I did with that. So now I'm really doing something with it. So I'm so grateful that I was given that bank check for $30.28. Yeah. I'm grateful for it. It sucked at the time, but look at all of this now. I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. Well, as you started talking there about some of the stuff you're getting into, the motivational speaking, it makes me wonder, and maybe you've already sort of answered it, but what is your biggest dream right now? Or if there's a few of them, that's okay too.
Oh, geez. It's unlimited. When you really realize what your potential is, when you come from such a abysmal place and you want to end your life, and now you're so grateful, you understand that you are limitless and you can reinvent and recreate as many times as you want. I definitely would love to be more on the stage speaking to high schoolers, middle schoolers. Yeah. Talking to groups of survivors so that they can change into a thriver mode instead of a survival victim mentality. But in this day and age, I think a lot of our youth they don't have the inspiration that people like we did when we were growing up. So to be able to do that, I have athletics in my background. So anything from schools to sports teams to whatever, that's what I really would love to do. Would love to do.
I encourage you. I'm sure you're going to do it no matter what, but please keep pushing on that, because it seems like apparent to me that you would be fantastic at that. It's just, thank you. It just comes out of you. Your story is inspiring. How you've grown over time is inspiring. So I think it would resonate with a lot of people. And I think, if I can help in any way with that, please let me know, because if I can be connecting you to anybody, I love connecting people too. So I'd love to help with that, because I want that to come into the world. I think it should. So a couple of other questions as we start to wrap up here. First one is just one kind of personally. I'm from New Jersey. You're in New Jersey. I don't know if you grew up there or not, but it gets kind of a bad rap. I think you're frozen right now. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm not hearing you. So I'm guessing the connection's just a little off right now. So we'll give it a minute. You're back.
I'm back.
Okay, I'll come back. So just a few questions here to kind of wrap things up. One of which is, I know you're in New Jersey right now. Did you grow up in New Jersey?
No, I grew up in Maryland.
Okay. So I grew up in New Jersey, spent, the first most of the first 40 years of my life in New Jersey, a little bit New York, a little Pennsylvania. And New Jersey, you know, it's the butt of the jokes. It's the armpit of the United States and all these jokes. But I personally kind of think it's a cool place. So in your experience, what do you love most about New Jersey?
So where I live in one of the northernmost counties. So it's pretty rural where I live. And it is like a small town mentality.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, you're gonna turn up at the cows at that corner there. You know? And I love that. I love the locals because they're so giving and generous. And trust me, when I moved to New Jersey, I was like, what did I just do? Everybody's mad here. Everybody's angry. Everybody's in a hurry. Like I was like, you know, people will cut you off and you're like, you're welcome. You're welcome. You know, it took me years to acclimate. But I love New Jersey because I can be where I live. It's going to take me a little while to get to the beach, and I love the beach. But I also horseback ride at a barn that's 20 minutes away. So I have everything right here.
Yeah.
So, and I'm close to my parents. I coerce them to move up close by. Cool. And so I'm very fortunate for that. But I love it here just because for New Jersey, it's so different than what everybody's concept of New Jersey is.
Yeah.
So
you're up in in Sussex County, or?
Yeah, I'm in Sussex County. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's nice up there. Yeah. That's
it's beautiful. I mean, there's trees. Look, there's trees in New Jersey.
Yes, I know. People always are like, Jersey doesn't have trees. I'm like, well, you've only seen that little strip outside of Newark Airport or the train station.
Exactly.
But, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on from Jersey, but I appreciate that. I spent a little time in Sussex County growing up, mostly either skiing or going to what it was probably the world's most dangerous theme park back in the day, called Action Park, which used to have the nickname Traction Park.
I live in between. I'm on right at the base of one of the ski trails.
Okay.
So I can walk to either place. It's so funny.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So funny. So one of the things I do like to do with this show is also kind of connect the guests. So I'll ask you in a minute a question for our next guest, but I have a question from our previous guest for you. So our previous guest is a guy named Dan Nelkin. He's from the advertising world, a creative director, copywriter, and now an author. He's written a book in the last year or two here, doing really well. And he was sort of intrigued by your story. And he is a parent of a young son, and you have two teen, I believe, sons. So he was just honestly curious, what's the best parenting advice that you've received?
Oh, this is a good one. And it goes back to just showing up for your kids. Show up when they are unlovable. Show up and sit with them and hear them, because if they don't tell you the little things when they're little, they're not going to tell you the big things when they're bigger. And one of the best things that I ever did when my kids were little is, there was 50-50 custody. So they would be with me 2 nights, him 2 nights, and then we would have a 3-day weekend. So Friday through Monday. And when they were little, I would just, at nighttime, I would lay down with one and just have a conversation. And then the other night would be with the other. And those nighttime conversations, I got to know who they are, how they think, and it gives them a place to dream and ask questions and also get to know you, the parent. So it was like, the dreamy questions, it's like, wow, the kid's really like introspective, or he's really a dreamer. You just get a little window into them. And of course they're going to grow up and, they're going to have parts of them, but that connection so early on is so important, because when they get to be teenagers, they don't want to talk to you. They're like, oh, now you get the eye roll and you're like, please just talk to me. But they're going to show up when you're ready for bed. And when you're ready for bed, you don't want to show up for anybody, but that's on their timetable. So show up for them on their timetable. It sucks, but you know what? You're still their parent. You're still, you still have to show up for them. So it starts very young. So those are my best pieces of advice. Show up for them early so that you can show up and they can come to you later on with the really hard things.
Oh, I love that. And I love the notion of both really getting to know your kid and allowing them to know you, because, you know, certainly from my sort of memory of growing up, it like the parent-child relationship can often be sort of transactional, meaning it's like they're making me dinner, I'm cleaning my room, I'm doing these things. It's like, you know, you have to find those moments where you're not just like either being told what to do or resisting what to do as the kid, like, and actually like just being together. And however that can be, you know, for me, that was, you know, having moments with my dad, going outside and doing some sports stuff, you know, with my mom would just, I would just sit with her at the dining room table, you know, back in the day, and we would just talk. So I love that advice, and I will make sure that Dan gets a chance to watch this so he can absorb that advice as well. So now to flip the script, our next guest is a guy named James Madison, who is a coach, and he really helps people kind of focus on living their purpose, you know, and stuff like that. Do you have any questions for him that I can pass along?
I didn't get my question until I was driving home from an errand today, and it just popped in my head because I was struggling with it. I was like, oh man, okay. But teenagers specifically, and there's whole Gen Z generation, and they're the technology ones. And I do feel, like I said before, there's a lack of inspiration. So as a result, older teens have a hard time finding purpose, especially in figuring out, you know, a job and a career, and to differentiate between the two, and to recognize the difference between purpose in a job and purpose in life. So how do you approach your teen, or how do you approach a teen in general, or somebody who is an adult has lost their way? And that's a whole other topic. I love that. I was once lost, and that was like the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
And how do you help someone, or how do you facilitate someone finding their own purpose?
I'll definitely pass that along. I think he'll have some really good stuff. I know he digs into things like finding your values and connecting to your values, but I'm sure he can go deeper into that stuff. But I really like your insight about younger folks not having inspiration. And I don't know if that's just like the cynicism of social media, and just like the lack of like, I don't know. I don't know. Is that like, it's not cool to be inspired? Is it just we've been in this kind of dark phase for a while where everything's just like bad out there? But where do you think that comes from, the lack of inspiration?
I think it's a lack of exposure of human. And the reason why I say that is, when I was I can't even believe this. And I mentioned this before to somebody. I was in 7th or 8th grade, and back then we actually had Montel Williams, our school. This was before he had his own show and so on and so forth. And he has a very rich background. He was in the military, and something that this motivational speech that he gave us used the phrase "mountain, get out of my way." And it was about looking at life's challenges, and yes, it's a mountain, and you got to tell that mountain to get out of the way. And that's something that I've carried with me ever since. I'm 48 years old. That's when I was like 12, 13. And if I could if you ever hear this, I'd love to meet you and thank you, because what you said to us back then has been something that I have held onto to keep me going. Like the mountain is, it's a rough climb, and it's not easy, but you don't get to see the beauty from the top until you climb it. And that's getting the mountain out of the way. Yeah. You know, and it's facing those crappy times at work, the sucky parts of work, the parts of life. Yeah. You know, so it's that's definitely a useful tool. And I think kids, and he came in person, and everything is so much on a screen. And so when you have that energy and you're in that energy, it's different. And I don't think schools or parents do that for their kids. I've brought my kids, like both my sons, my younger son wants to be an aircraft mechanic. I have a friend who is a former Thunderbird, and I got them connected, and then we got to meet the Thunderbirds. We hung out with the Thunderbirds all weekend, and that game changer for my kids, you know, especially my younger one. It's about the exposure to humans, not what's on a screen or what somebody's saying on a screen. It's about that in-person presence.
Energy.
There's something about it. It's the energy, the conveying of it is different.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think I hadn't thought about it much because I'm not living it, you know, and I'm not seeing it in the way you are through the eyes of your kids. And it's, I mean, I think there's so much good with technology, but when you lose, you know, that ability to connect with people, one-on-one, group, watching somebody give a wonderful talk, going to a play, like even that energy of like experiencing live theater or live music or whatever. And there is just something very different about it than sort of scrolling through and getting it. That's nice, but it's not the whole of human experience. So I love that.
Correct.
And might be just something, you know, for the universe to kind of ponder, which is, you know, how do we blend a world that has so much technology with those opportunities for more genuine human interaction, so that you get those moments where you're 12 years old and something just is glued onto you, you know, for life. Probably not as easy to get that from a TikTok video, you know? So I love that. Well, you mentioned this Desuckify idea, and another question I always love to ask is if you could wave a magic wand and make the world of work in particular, you know, fully desuckified, or at least less, you know, less sucky, what would you do?
Have people get out of their own way.
Yeah.
Because the ego, we talk about the ego a lot in martial arts, and the ego, it can be a good thing, and it can be a very bad thing. When it's a bad thing, it's a roadblock. It is a wall that can be put up between two people. So if people could just get it out of their own way, everybody could work a bit more cooperatively, and things would be so much easier, and there would be less misunderstanding. You know, everything would just be easier. We just got out of our own way sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like that connects really perfectly back to your idea of being able to spend some time working on yourself and dealing with yourself. Cause I think maybe we're in our own way because we're just sitting with all our unresolved stuff, and we're not able to then see clearly. We've got all this stuff. So every time somebody does something, it's going to trigger any one of those things inside of us, you know. So the more we can work on that, we're always going to have triggers, but I think it makes it less likely that we assign the worst intention to other people if we're at least feeling pretty good about ourselves. When we feel bad about ourselves, all we look and we see these mirrors of just, you know, yep, I don't like that, I don't like that, which we're basically just saying, I don't like me, you know.
Right. And the other piece there's a second piece to that, and that is, it's okay for you to say to somebody, I know we're supposed to talk right now. I just need a little bit of time. Today's not the day. Can we move it? Like, I'm not in the mental space. Like, we all want to help our friends. We all want to show up for people, but we can only show up to our own capacity. So if it's not a good day, it's okay to say to your friend or your colleague when I just got thrown off my course. I just need a little bit of time. Can we move this a half an hour so I can just reset and be fully present for you? You know, and for the project we're working on, the task. Like, I've gotten on phone calls when I'm like, I'm really sorry, I just hung up the phone. Let me just shift gears. Yeah. And the person's like, okay. You know, and that's getting out of our own way too. Yeah. And that person on the other end is like, oh, okay, that gives me a little bit of time too. I'm good. Okay, now I can really shift gears. All right, let's gather it, you know? Yeah. So that's part of it. And we don't realize getting out of our own way is just being very real and saying, I need a breath. Let me take a breath. It's okay, because that brings a very human part of ourselves to the table too.
Yeah, it's disarming, you know, to hear somebody sort of say, I need a moment. Like, oh, okay. Wait, we're allowed to like not be perfect all the time. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I know I'm a perfectionist and I'm learning to let go of that a little bit and
Yeah.
breathe. And it's easier said than done, but and again, I'm a work in progress. But
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that I have better interactions and better outcomes in tasks and situations when I can do that and say, can I just take 30 seconds? I just need to switch. I'm going to mute you. I'll walk away. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, I'll just go get water.
Yeah.
We're good. And it's how you really connect, because you're like, I'm not perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to, but I just can't write this in this 30-second block.
Mm-hmm. No,
And it's okay.
It is okay, but I think we have a story that it's not okay to look less than fully capable in any moment. For some reason, we just think we have to always be right here. And it's like, no, I need a moment. Or even, if it's like, I'm not sure I can do this right now. Or if I do, just so you know, I'm not 100% here.
Yeah,
letting people
absolutely.
know that, so that like you can be, I think just that the disarmingness of that, I think immediately like invites people to be more real with each other, rather than sort of going like, I'm on edge and I don't want to say the wrong thing and I don't want to do the wrong thing. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to be real now. Okay. That's very inviting. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because we all have these titles at work, and especially our kids see us as always high performing. And that goes back to saying to your kids, you have outside stressors and you snap at them. We all have done it. Yeah. And I have flat out stopped myself and, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just stressed about something. The kids need to see that you're human too. So it doesn't matter if it's at work or, your kids like constantly talking and you're just like, I want to hear you, but can I just pause? Can we just stop for a second? What you have to say is really important. So just give me a second, because I'm stressed and I need to let go of it. And your kids see you as a real human being and not just mom, like the superwoman.
Yeah.
It's impossible to be that all the time.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think in general, I just love the idea of getting out of our way. And I hope we can. I mean, it's not easy. I get that. The last question I always ask, which is, well, I'll have a couple of questions, but this is the last sort of big question, which is a silly question. I use sound effects on my show. If you've listened at all, like I do cat sounds and other stuff, and always try to inject a little fun and levity into the show with that. Do you have a sound that you can add, and it will show up somewhere in this show, probably in the intro?
I do. And I took some time to really think about this. And I know I mentioned I horseback ride, and I'm still new to it. And I'm learning to barrel race, and I'm 48 starting that. And people think I'm crazy, and it's scary, but that's, once you're scared, that's when you got to do it. But to me, I've learned so much in horseback riding lessons. And one of my hashtags is giddy up, let's go. And so in that, there's a yeehaw in there. And then the other, and it's such a beautiful sound when you walk beside a horse and you hear the clip clop, or the sound of feet underneath you, their feet on the ground. It's such a powerful, startling, humbling feel, because whether you're next to a horse or you're on top of a horse, that's 1,000+ pound animal. And it is magical. Yeah. So the sound of running feet or walking feet, the clip clop or the pace of the horse under you, that's a sound that's so sacred to me these days.
Can you make that sound?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so hard. And that's hard, because whether it's on like pavement or like asphalt or on the ground, it's even different. In the dirt. There's different tones, and that goes back to being able to hear what my parents can't. So that makes me grateful. And so it's a clip clop, clip clop, clip, and it's like
there's a rhythm to it.
There's a rhythm to it, and there's like a bass sound that I can't generate. It's just this underlying.
That 1,000 pounds of depth that's just going. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was trying to think of how to make that sound in my head, and I was just thinking of that like clacking sound. Like,
yeah, it's like, yeah, that's exactly it.
I love that.
That's it right there.
Yeah, that's so fun. Yeah, I mean, I've never ridden a horse, but I certainly know that sound, having been around horses before. Well, I appreciate you offering those sound effects. I know it's kind of like a little weird, but it's kind of fun. I want to give people a chance.
Into discomfort, though. That's stepping into discomfort and doing something you're uncomfortable with. And that's where fun and the growth happens.
It is, yeah. And I think it's a nice little kind of easy way into a little bit of discomfort. Although for some people it may be a lot. I can be open about that. Where can people find you if they want to kind of track with you and hear more about your story and just kind of keep up with what you're doing?
So I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm a big Facebooker. I've been growing my Instagram more. I haven't been on X like I should, but I will. And then the threads by Instagram, I'm on there too. So any one of those platforms, all those platforms, I'm there. I have a public profile. Just hop on in, say hi, whatever. I'm open to talking about anything. If you need help with anything, I'll show up.
That's awesome. And I'll make sure I can share those links in the show notes so that people can track you down nice and easy. The only other question I would just ask is what's next for you?
That's a tough question just because I have an almost 19-year-old. I have a 16-year-old. And then I have, elderly parents and one has cancer. So what's next for me is at some point I plan on moving out of New Jersey. And that's simply because New Jersey was never my home. And when the time is right, I will move, and I'm looking to more of the southern states. Texas has always called to me, and my insurance office is out of there. So, but one of my ultimate goals is, people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I want to get my pickup truck and my RV and just go. Put my stuff in a storage space and go and experience. I have traveled to many of the 50 states. Some states I haven't been to, but I did that when I was 9. And so now, in my 50s, that's something I want to do, whether it's for a week or for several weeks at a time, but I just want to do that.
Yeah,
just
that sounds awesome.
I can live for me instead of caregiving and caring. I can care for me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. It doesn't sound even remotely crazy to me. That sounds very appealing. I did a couple of drives across the country when I was in my 20s, and it was just so fun. But I think doing it at a little older age with all that perspective and all that curiosity that really just bubbles to the surface at this point in life, I think that sounds really fun. I hope you get a chance to do it or do it more than once.
I will. Yeah. I will make it happen.
I believe you. I totally believe you. Well, Zoe, I really appreciate you coming on this show. This was a really fun conversation. We dove into some deep stuff. We had some fun stuff. And I think people will come away feeling better about humanity as a result of it, because I think there's a lot of inspiration in what you have to say. To your point, we need more of that in the world. So thank you for bringing it. And I look forward to sharing it with people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And again, if there's anything that I can do to help you or anybody else out there, I will show up.
Awesome. Thank you, Zoe. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And a huge thanks to Zoe for bringing courage, strength, and inspiration to the show. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, rate, review, subscribe, or consider backpacking through Europe and yodeling our praises to every man, woman, child, and llama you meet. To see where Zoe's story leads next, you can follow her on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. She shares vulnerably and generously. I highly recommend making a connection. I also recommend checking out my site and my Substack newsletter. I'm on a mission to make work suck less, and I'd love for you to join me. Want to make that desuckification happen ASAP? Let's set up a free half-hour strategy session. Bye, everyone.